Board Game Geek is basically like the IMDb of board gaming. You can find all kinds of resources, reviews, you can even look at the top 10 board games of all time, which I'm actually going to put right here so you can see the current list. Well, in the past year and a half of being in the hobby, I've managed to play all 10 games in this list, and what I want to do is re-rank these based on my own personal opinion, starting with my number 10, Gloomhaven. In Gloomhaven, you're taking control of a hero fighting through a massive campaign of over 90 different scenarios, and you are going to be fighting baddies, getting loot, leveling up your character, doing all kinds of really fun stuff. Very addictive gameplay. I like to compare it to Diablo, if you've ever played that video game. I know some people compare it to D&D, but on rails. All in all, very fun, very good experience. I like the puzzle in every single scenario. Each character has their own unique set of cards and abilities. Very cool game. The reason this is number 10 for me is that, well, two main reasons. The first is that throughout the scenarios in this game, your character is actually kind of getting weaker, and that makes sense thematically. You know, you do have to rest in the game in order to get more cards and to restore some HP. And it makes sense, right? You're fighting through a scenario and your character's getting more tired, more fatigued, but I don't know, it feels a little too restrictive for me. I like to be super OP in just games in general, and that's just not the case in this game, so that's entirely personal preference. But the second reason this is lower on the list for me is that this game is too big for me. Like I said already, this game has over 90 scenarios. That's insane. And I just couldn't find a group of people willing to commit to something so big. And I'm not too big on solo gaming, especially something this size. So at one point I owned this game, I did sell it. I enjoy it, but it's almost too much of a good thing. And that's why I have this at number 10. Next up, we have Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. Now this is, as the name suggests, still Gloomhaven at its core. The fact that we have two Gloomhavens in the top 10 list is actually pretty insane, but there were a few changes made to this game which made the game a little bit higher up for me personally. The first is that they completely went away with tiles as they had in the OG box, and they created a scenario book which makes the setup and teardown way faster, which is a huge plus for me. They also created a really, really good rule book, one of the best rule books I've ever read. And how it works is over the course of the first 5 scenarios, they slowly implement rules. And by the 6th scenario, you're good to go. You know everything you need to know about the game. And if you've ever seen any of my other videos, you might know this was actually the first board game that I ever bought when getting into board gaming as a hobby. And I had no problems with it. It was kind of a lot at first, but the way the rule book works just made it so easy, so seamless, and yeah, this game has a special place in my heart. There are the same issues I have with the OG game present in this one as well, you know, feeling a little too restrictive for my taste, but all in all, still a very good game, very enjoyable, and that's why it's my number 9. Coming in at number 8 is Terraforming Mars. This is a semi-cooperative game where you're working as a corporation trying to make Mars habitable. You're going to be doing things like increasing the oxygen, increasing the temperature of the planet, as well as adding cities and water to the planet, doing all kinds of things. It's really, really fun, very addictive. There's a lot of fun mechanisms in this game like tableau building. You of course have engine building with all of the different resources that you're trying to increase the production of. You also have some area control with the cities and the forests that you're putting down. All in all, I really enjoy this game. It's one of the first games I got into my collection as well, alongside Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. So I played this a ton. That could be why this is a little bit lower on the list for me. I played it a lot. I really like it. One minor criticism I have of the game is that turns tend to drag a little bit for my taste, especially late game when people have like 20 cards in their tableau and they're triggering all kinds of abilities. It's very fun when you're that player, but when you're waiting, it can be somewhat of a slog. You know, Prelude definitely adds to that. That's the expansion that gives you a couple different bonuses in the beginning of the game. But all in all, I really, really enjoy this. There are just a few other Euros on this list that I would rather play. Coming in at number 7, we have Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. Now, in this game, you're taking control of your own faction, and you are working to build your fleet, expand your faction, and ultimately get 10 victory points. You're going to be getting these a variety of ways, but mostly through these objective cards, and this game's epic. That is the one word I would use to describe this game. It was one of my board game bucket list games, and I'm so glad to have finally played it. It's so good. There's a lot of politics, there's a lot of fighting, or there can be a lot of fighting if you want there to be. It's very extremely punishing and brutal. In the game that I had, one of my friends attacked his neighbor, and he went into the fight thinking he had it in the bag, and the opponent played in a card that just wiped him out, and he paid the price for like the rest of the game. It was really brutal, but super entertaining, and this game's great. This game's very good. I enjoyed all 7 hours that it took us to play, which is apparently pretty fast for 5 of the 6 players being new. But yeah, this game's awesome. Highly recommend you playing it. The reason I have this at number 7 is kind of more of a personal thing, I guess, but it's really hard to get to the table. A game this size, of this scope, it really shines at 6 players, and being able to get 6 people to coordinate and schedule that is almost impossible. I mean, I had to schedule this game out about a month in advance, and that's kind of it. That's the main reason. I just don't foresee myself playing this very often, but I did really enjoy it, and I think you should play it too if you haven't. But that's why Twilight Imperium is my number 7. Speaking of Imperiums, my number 6 is Dune Imperium. Now, in Dune, you are taking control of one of the house leaders in the Dune universe, and you are working to get 10 victory points. You're going to be gaining these a variety of ways, but mostly through building up your reputation with other factions, as well as stealing them from other players. You can even buy victory points later in the game, but that's pretty difficult to do. But this is going to be a hot take, but I actually think, in my opinion, this game gives me similar things that Twilight Imperium gives, but in a much more condensed package. And you can play this game in like under 2 hours. So I'm able to table this way more frequently than I ever could some of those bigger games like Twilight Imperium. And that's why it's a little bit higher up for me. I also really love the mechanisms in this game. This is a worker placement deck builder, and I love deck builders. So for those reasons, Dune Imperium is my number 6. So we've finally broken into the top 5, and my number 5 is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Now, I think Pandemic, the OG original game, is really good. It's a solid 7, but what Legacy achieves is something that elevates this game so much higher for me personally. You know, at the end of the day, you are working to cure these 4 diseases that have spread throughout the world, and you know, each person has their own character with their own abilities, and it's really fun. I love that cooperative aspect. You have to really work together and strategize, or else you're going to get your butt kicked. But in the Legacy version, there are permanent changes that are happening to the board, to your characters, and it makes it so exciting. I feel like the stakes are just so high in this game because you can actually like lose this game. If you lose enough, you straight up lose the game. And I think there's 12 different scenarios, one for each month. You're able to get 1 loss, and then you can try again. If you lose that, you have to continue on to the next month, regardless of if you lost or not. And so, I don't know. I'm not done with this game yet. I'm actually, I think we're on March with my group. So still relatively early on, but this game is just so exciting. I love being able to play this and getting it to the table, and it's just so fun. If you like Pandemic and you have a group of 2 to 4 people who can play through this campaign, fully recommend it. It is so exciting, and I'm actually keeping everything. I saw someone on Reddit made a post where they framed the board at the end of their campaign, and I'm completely stealing that and going to do the same thing. But yeah, Pandemic Legacy, it's so good, fully recommend it, and that's why it's my number 5. All right, so these next 3 were really hard for me to put in order. I'm still debating changing this last minute while I'm filming, but we're gonna go ahead and stick with my gut. And at number 4, we have Brass Birmingham. Now in brass, you are an entrepreneur during the Industrial Revolution, and you are working to be the wealthiest person in the game. You're going to be doing this by expanding your network, connecting cities with either railways or canals, depending on which era you are in the game. And you're also going to be building structures and different buildings in all of these different cities that you're connecting. So overall, straightforward theme, pretty dry. I love it. I think it's beautiful to look at. And the main reason I have this so high is I really like the positive player interaction in this game. So specific buildings will have resources placed on them, such as a coal mine. So every time I build a coal mine, I'll put coal on there, and then in future turns, I might need to use coal to build a different building. Well, the thing is, I can use my coal, but so can other people. People can steal your resource, and that sounds terrible, right? Well, it's really not that bad, because once the last resource is removed from my coal mine, I get to flip it over, and I'm going to be gaining both victory points in most situations as well as income during the income phase. So it's helping me out, and it never feels bad. Even if someone throws me off a little bit by taking that resource, there's usually always a way to mitigate that and spin it to where it's still either not hurting you too badly or helping you. So I just love this game for that reason. I think it doesn't feel too restrictive, although it is very strategic. And I'm sure as I play this more, or if I played with, some experienced people, they'd probably demolish me. But every time I played it, it just feels so fun, so rewarding, and that's why this is number 4 for me. I'm going to be honest with you, these next two are pretty much a tie, but for the sake of making a cohesive list that's in order, we'll say my number 3 is Star Wars Rebellion. Now in this game, you are taking control of either the Empire or the Rebellion, and you are working to defeat your opponent. It's going to depend on which faction you are. Your win condition varies. If you are the Rebellion, you are trying to protect your secret base and outlast the Empire until they're defeated. And if you're the Empire, you are trying to find their secret base and destroy it. So it's a very fun cat and mouse mechanisms. There are just so much going on in this game. It is massive. I would say it's on the scale of, Twilight Imperium, kind of on that level. If you're a fan of Star Wars, this is the definitive game to play. I've played just about all the kind of top or most widely discussed Star Wars games, and this one's for sure my favorite. The deck building game is really good, and it's a lot shorter. It's good for what it is, but yeah, this game's phenomenal. I think, I'm a casual Star Wars fan. I'm not like hugely into it, and it's still so good. I mean, being able to recruit some of those really iconic heroes like Luke or Chewbacca feels so cool. I think the battling is interesting. It's not my favorite part, but it's not an afterthought, I don't think. It's used as dice, which is weird that some of these really heavy strategy games use dice, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, I kind of like it, honestly. You think you have it in the bag, you have a plan, you're going into this situation where you're like, oh yeah, there's no way they can win. And then, the last game I was playing as the Rebellion, and I was trying to attack the Empire, which is super risky, but I was really confident. I rolled 5 dice. They were all blanks. Could not believe it. My friend was laughing hysterically, and I almost cried. But it made for such a fun experience, and that's why, I don't know, everything about this game is just epic. It just feels so good, and this is a game that every time I play it, I have continued to think about it and to talk about it days and weeks after I played it, and that is a testament why this game's so good and why it's my number 3 game. And to the surprise of absolutely no one, my number 2 is War of the Ring 2nd Edition. Now in this game, you have one person controlling the Shadow, which are Sauron's forces and all the baddies, and then you have the Free Peoples, which are the Fellowship, as well as the dwarves, elves, and all the good people. And win condition varies, of course, depending on which faction you are. If you are the Free People, you are trying to destroy the ring or conquer certain strongholds, which is very difficult to do for them. And if you're the Shadow, you are trying to overrun and corrupt the ring bearer and kill him that way, or also defeat strongholds, which is a lot easier for the Shadow. And one thing to mention is anytime a unit dies for the Free People, it's permadeath. They are removed to the box, out of the game for the rest of the game, and it is very, very brutal. Now, I think this game achieves something very similar to Star Wars Rebellion, where every time I play this, it creates something so epic, especially as a fan of Lord of the Rings. I forgot to mention, that's why this is a little bit higher up, is because I just love Tolkien's universe. But it creates something just so epic, and it's every time I play it, I just continue to think about it. It creates so much conversation, even during the game, where you're kind of like talking crap to your opponent. It's just really fun, and just envisioning, it's like creating a brand new movie every time you play it. And that's why I just love it so much. If you like Lord of the Rings and you're able to find someone who can commit to learning and playing this, I promise you will not be disappointed. It is so freaking good, and that's why it's my number 2. So that leaves my number 1 game, and this is Ark Nova. Now, if you've ever seen any of my other videos, you know that I love this game. It's actually my number 1 game of all time, so it had to be number 1 in this list, right? And I love Ark Nova for so many reasons, but mostly because of the mechanisms. They're so good, and they just come together to hit the dopamine receptors in all the right places for me. I really enjoy the action selection, which is the core mechanism in the game. You also have a tableau to keep up with. You have some tile placement slash sort of a polyomino little puzzle with the zoo and the enclosures. There's just so much going on in this game. It's a fun race. It's very competitive. And why I have this at number 1, and another reason why I love this so much, is that as soon as I am done with this game, I want to immediately set it back up and play it again. And that happens every time I play this game. And that is just a testament to how much I like it, how good I think it is, and why I have this as my number 1. And these are the final results. So we have the top 10 list from Board Game Geek right here, and then we have my re-ranked top 10 list over here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with my list? And if so, what's your list? I'm really curious to know how you guys rank BGG's top 10. This is Jordan here at Totally Bored. Thanks for watching.